Joe mentioned the major developments in the Middle East. President Trump says he plans to travel to Egypt later this week for an official signing of the ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. Israel's government voted to approve the deal early this morning at its cabinet meeting. Now Israel's defense forces will move behind agreed-upon lines inside Gaza, and the ceasefire will take effect. Once the IDF has moved to new positions, a 72-hour clock to release the remaining hostages will begin. President Trump said yesterday he expects the hostages to be released on Monday or Tuesday.
Richard Haas, an extraordinary, extraordinary developments, actually, that started, as we were talking about a good bit yesterday, that started with the bombing in Doha and started a chain of events that have led us here to cusp of a deal that looks like it's moving forward.
Oh, I think this deal will happen. You're right. The overreach of the Israeli attack in Doha led to a very strong Arab and American reaction. And it got President Trump to essentially confront the Israeli prime minister and say, this has got to stop.
How important was that to making this happen?
That was one of the missing ingredients here, Joe. I think the other element might have been the calendar. All up to now, Bibi Netanyahu, the prime minister, has been worried about compromising it all here. Why? Because it would bring down his coalition, his government. Well, guess what? He's got to bring it down anyhow. Israel faces elections probably early next year.
And he can't win those elections without Donald Trump on his side.
Without Donald Trump on his side. And also, he's been the prime minister of war. Now we can argue I'm the prime minister who also got the hostages back. So actually, this teased things up, I think, extraordinarily well for Bibi Netanyahu. So I think for him, it changed his calculation. Hamas was under pressure, obviously, from the Arab world. They want peace in the region. They want a more normal relationship with Israel. They're the ones who provide the money, a lot of it, to Hamas. So essentially, the stars aligned, and President Trump, to his credit, ran with it. So he's been I'd use the word passive a lot, looking at how he had reacted towards Bibi Netanyahu in this war. He basically changed gears. Instead of leaning back, he leaned in, and this is a really welcome development.
Let's begin right now. Contributing editor for the Financial Times, Kim Gatash. She is also a contributing writer for The Atlantic magazine. Kim, it was a pretty extraordinary setting where you had Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff, and the Qatari officials sitting down and deciding among them there couldn't be a negotiation with Netanyahu or Hamas. They had to write up a 20-point plan, and then basically, the Qataris said, okay, we have Hamas, and Jared and Steve said, we've got Netanyahu, and here we are.
There is a lot of relief in the Middle East, but there's also a lot of very cautious optimism. The Israelis are not talking about this as a peace plan. They're talking about this in terms of a ceasefire, which is only applying the first phase of this deal. So as much as I think we should be relieved that the fighting has stopped and the ceasefire came into effect just about an hour ago in Gaza, the shelling has stopped and Israeli troops are starting to move to the agreed line. I think we have to be very cautious that this is only the first phase, and that Netanyahu's coalition partners are making clear from their perspective there is no peace deal, there is no 20-point plan. So this is going to require a lot more follow-through from the Trump administration than we got when they declared victory last time and a peace deal or a peace agreement last time, which was January. I was also on your show to discuss that. And that ceasefire fell through because once, everybody sang Kumbaya and said, great, we've got a deal, people walked away. Envoy Witkoff walked away, had other things to do. I hope that Steve Witkoff and now Jared Kushner and others in the Trump administration have learned some lessons from that first experience of trying to apply a ceasefire with two parties who both still don't agree on all the details. And once Netanyahu gets the hostages back, he may not want to abide with the ceasefire because his coalition partners will put pressure on him again. Meanwhile, Hamas doesn't necessarily want to disarm. They've agreed to this first phase. There's a lot of work that still needs to be done. And I really hope that everybody will apply themselves to make sure, including Arab countries, that this can proceed to the second phase. And if I may, just one last point, I think the reason why President Trump wants to come to the Middle East is not only to say, this is my deal and I've got this on the table and I did something that President Biden couldn't do. It is to, in essence, put Benjamin Netanyahu in a straitjacket and say, great, now you go to the second phase of this deal. We need to get this done.
Well, and that is what
needed.
People in the administration have been saying, which is we have Netanyahu in a box. And they're not saying it, passively. They're saying it, a tinge of, I won't say anger, but yeah, after Doha, his options are far more,
after a lot of things,
far more limited. But yeah, we have Kim's exactly right. Everybody needs to be very cautious about this, because you have Netanyahu that doesn't want this deal. You have the hardliners in his cabinet that don't want this deal, and you have Hamas who doesn't want to disarm. You talk to Israel and supporters of Israel, they'll say, we don't think Hamas will ever disarm. And you talk to supporters of or opponents of Israel, and they will say, we don't think Netanyahu will ever abide by these 20 terms. So, yeah, a lot of, as Kim said, a lot of work ahead.
Yeah, it's still very fragile, but to answer one of her questions, President Trump certainly, at least now, the White House is saying he's going, yes, to put his stamp on the deal, but also to send that message to Netanyahu. This needs to keep going. This can't be a one and done. We want this to continue. Now, we'll see if Trump has the follow through in the weeks, months ahead, but that is the intent right now. We should also note the U.S. sending 100 to 200 troops to the region. They won't go into Gaza itself, but to the region to help ease the process here, the ceasefire, to facilitate with the ceasefire, facilitate with the hostage releases, other nations doing the same. Kim, I wanted to go back to you here. President Trump has portrayed this as an important step towards bigger, broader Middle East peace, suggesting this could be regional transformation. That's a big, big ask. On the ground there, in the region, which you know so well, do people there share similar hopes? Do they think this could be more than just a ceasefire and the end of this particular war?
People are certainly hoping that it could be. I think that, for all the criticism that we can have of President Trump, and certainly, listening to the first segment of your show, there is a lot going on in the U.S. that is worthy of a lot of criticism and concern. But, if we separate these two things, the way President Trump tackled this issue this time with Netanyahu, he did something that no other president had done in a very long time, since perhaps President Bush the father, where he said, this is the deal, you need to go along with us. And if you don't like it, you know the number. This is what his Secretary of State at the time, James Baker, said. And so President Trump showed that with a strenuous phone call, putting boundaries, you could get the Israeli prime minister on board. But as I said, it is going to require a lot of follow through. And I think that getting Arab countries on board will help as well to frame this as a potential transformational moment for the region long term. And I want to pause here and think about the people who've been most affected by this. The families of the Israeli hostages, the remaining hostages, they've been living through 2 years of absolute anguish and nightmare. And 2 million Palestinians in Gaza have been living through hell as well. And every little bit of respite for them is a welcome moment that we should all welcome. My concern at the moment are the detractors in the region, including Iran, and the potential that Benjamin Netanyahu will potentially want to move forward with phase 2 of this deal, but show he is still capable of putting up a fight. And I think that the odds of a strike against Iran are going up again, another strike against Iran.
Contributing writer for The Atlantic magazine and contributing editor at the Financial Times, Kim Gattas, thank you very much for being on this morning.
Thank you so much, Kim. So, Richard, if you were advising the president about things to worry about, the pitfalls ahead, what are they?
that Hamas is not going to disarm. They're never going to fully disarm, and you couldn't monitor it or verify it. That if they did, that's the lesson we had with Northern Ireland, getting the paramilitaries to give up arms. Ceasefire may break down. You can imagine a situation where the word won't go out, or some people in Hamas are going to disagree with the guys who negotiated. Then Israel might see that as an opportunity to use military force against the breakdown.
So what do you do? I want to go back to number one. What did you do in Northern Ireland? What do you do in Gaza with Hamas if they're not going to disarm?
You put the focus on maintaining the ceasefire. That's something you can monitor. You can watch a ceasefire. You know if that's working. Giving up arms, Joe, they're going to stash away arms. You'll never get 100% of their arms, but you can get 100% compliance with the ceasefire. So I would focus on that.
So how do you do that also, though? I just want to ask, because I keep thinking about Northern Ireland. You had people like Jerry Adams, Martin McGuinness. You had strong people who had been in the middle of the war, who basically the paramilitary groups feared Jerry Adams and Martin McGuinness crossing them more than they did. Like British, like there was peer pressure on the most extreme radicals in Northern Ireland to put down their guns because they would have faced the wrath of their own. Where does that happen with Hamas?
That's one of the. You asked me what can possibly go wrong. That's another thing that's missing here. What we're missing on all sides is leadership that's willing and able to bring this forward. We don't see it on the Hamas side. It's weak, it's divided, and so forth. Obviously not on the Israeli side, other Palestinians in the West Bank. So in order to make peace work, you've got to have partners who are willing and able to deliver. So it's good we got this first phase, but this is the end of the beginning. This is not the beginning of the end. This is not peace. It's a significant breakthrough, and the challenge for the administration is going to really to keep it from unraveling, at the same time gradually to try to push it forward. But that 20-point plan gets really vague as to what's at the end of it. And again, we're going to have to go through elections a lot.
Right.
A lot to focus on.
I guess the main leverage comes from Qatar, who's been funding them, often at Benjamin Netanyahu's bequest. So
Richard Haas, thank you very much for coming on this morning.